All right. Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Diamond Rivera of Diamond Rivera Films, and you are tuned into another episode of Live Discussions with Diamond. And we are now on season 3. And today I have truly a special guest all the way from the DC area, the one and only Kat Arias.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. It's good to see you. And again, like I tell a lot of my guests, this is for me. This is a really big celebration of all of the hard work, of all of the contributions that you have given to our dance community as a whole. Because I think what gets lost is in our dance culture, in our dance scene. There's always events coming. There's always congresses, and
Yeah.
like we've talked privately and said that a lot of the conversations and meaningful conversations that usually happen in the hotel rooms
Yep.
and privately when we kind of have that time to digress and collect our thoughts on things. But it's important for me as well to really pick the brain of the artists that I really truly admire, because again, you're in DC, I'm in New York, but our paths have crossed a
Yeah.
few times over the years. And I'm really thankful that I get to have you on this platform, because I think it's really important that myself, but also the people tuning in, understand who Kat is just as a dancer, but also beyond the stage. And seeing the human side to you. So again, I thank you so much. I hope before we even get things started, I just want to know, how are you doing thus far?
I'm okay. I'm doing all right. I think I told you that I had to have surgery 2 weeks ago, so
Mhm.
I'm much better today than I was even just a couple days ago. So I'm just really grateful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, through these crazy times, I've also told you as well that I really do appreciate what you've done, especially in DC, but now with COVID and realizing that a lot of more studios now are beginning to open up, but seeing that, especially with yourself, that you're really taking the safety first approach, especially because again, you have students that come in maybe from different areas, but again, seeing that your students can still have a lot of fun and really be in tune and be happy to come back into this scene. But knowing that as a director, as a teacher, that you value their safety first. So again, I thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, and definitely today, I feel like we're really going to get a better understanding of who you are, because many people who have known you or know you in our scene who don't live in that DMV area, a lot of times they just know Ferocity, and they just
Mhm.
know you as the teacher, as the person who
Mom.
travels. Yeah, and I think it's really important that people again can see that human aspect and human side and realize that even beyond the stage, you're a normal person with feelings, with emotions, with experiences. So again, even seeing too that a lot of dancers, once I put that promo out for you, they privately messaged me and was so thankful, because a lot of those people personally, and they're like, thank you, because we know her so well, and it's great to just have other people know you. And I want you to know as well that during the interview, I love posting real time comments from people. Like, as I'm telling you this, we got Courtney Matthews saying, "Hey,
Hi,
what's up?"
Courtney.
Yeah, and so again, it's great just to see that people are reaching out and seeing this interview live as well. Now we're going today, actually, in this interview, we're going to start a new segment called the randoms. So it'll be about 10 questions randomly given to you. And also, just to let you know, and we've talked about this, at least one question only is about dance. So we're probably going to get to
So,
understand you differently. So that's great. But again, how I love to start the interview is really getting to know Kat before Ferocity and understanding where dance entered your life and how it impacted you at an early age.
so I always wanted to dance. It's just always been a part of, I would say, my culture. At home, we weren't necessarily dancers. Like my family in Venezuela was like singers. They liked to
Yeah.
sing, they could or not, and so there was always music playing. And my mom's side and my dad's side, actually both big sides of the family. But I grew up in Venezuela, so my mom was like one of like 8 or 9, and so like they were always singing and stuff. And Juan Luis Guerra was the first like cassette
Ooh.
record that I heard. and really aging myself. But I think once I got to the United States, I started gaining weight, and so it
Mhm,
was pretty much like told to me all the time in different ways that dancing was just not for people like me, and so
mhm.
I kind of forgot about it until I was 15 and my mom wanted to do a quinceañera for me. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, well, you need dance lessons. And I was like, valid. Cause like, like the only thing I was doing was Britney Spears and Michael Jackson choreo from like music videos that I would see and like my high school dance team. And so
Yeah.
like that was like the extent of like my dreams of dancing. Um, and so it was funny because I later found out that my teacher for my quince is there's another dance studio in the area called Latin Dancer,
Mhm.
and it was the owner of that studio was my teacher when I was doing my quinces lessons, and he
Yeah.
told my mom, he like pulled her aside, and he was like, she needs to teach. He was like,
Mm.
"She needs to teach," and I like hadn't really thought about it. I was just really curious, and I would ask him what were the men's parts for like all the things that I was learning, and he would just like look at me, and he like
Mhm.
walked over to my mom, and he was like, "You should really think about having her teach." He was like, "She's more than just like a quince student." So
Yes.
that was like the first time I ever really was like, "Oh, like maybe maybe one day." But that was it, and then I didn't really start dancing until I was 22.
Mhm,
I was almost out of college, and it was like my last year, and I was working three different jobs and going to school full time to finish. And
mhm.
one of my jobs was I was the receptionist at a ballroom studio, and because ballroom is like my first love, like I
Yeah.
always loved ballroom dancing, and so I was so petrified because these dancers were amazing, like
Mhm.
to me, they all look pro, and I was like, man, like I want to do that, but they probably don't teach beginners like me. So like, I hid behind my little reception desk for a year. I wouldn't take any classes. Like I was able to take classes for free. I wouldn't take a single one. I was
Wow.
petrified. And then they took me to my first like ballroom competition, and I was like, I was like so awestruck. And like the next day, I called the person who's now been my coach ever since. His name is Jenya Bertashevich, and I used to see him teaching in the studio, and like I don't know where that courage came from. Like I found his number, I called him the next day, and I was like, I want lessons, and like immediately wanted to like throw up all over myself, but like that was it. After that, my life just became ballroom. I changed overnight. I was like a really pretty normal like early 20s. I would go to
Mhm.
happy hours and hang out with my friends, and like we'd all come back from college. But as soon as I found dancing, that's all I did. And because I used to work there, I used to be able to practice by myself. So I would like lock myself in the studio and I would practice for 40 hours a week. And if all I learned
Wow.
that week was one basic step, then I would do that one basic step for the whole 40 hours a week. I loved it so much. And like, or I would like create a little drill about it and, then write my questions for my teacher later. Cause this is before people started like recording their lessons. Like, so I would
Mhm.
write everything in a notebook and be like, man, what is that? And like drawing like pictures for myself. And it just became my whole life. Like overnight, everything changed. Like I went from like going out and everything, and then all of a sudden, no social life. I was in the studio all the time, all the time.
Wow. And at least before you keep going, I think it's really important understanding because you had a key point and you talked about coming from Venezuela and you're talking about then the body image aspect. And then you're realizing, because myself as a child, dealing with that in a dance setting that a lot of people have a certain image. And then coming here and then realizing that, but then talking about you having a quince. But the key thing I loved was that you said, that the choreographer could sense that you weren't just focusing on just having your own quince, but then you were focusing on the choreography, not from just the follow, but the lead standpoint. And that's really a big distinction for a person like yourself that was younger, because most people or most women that have quinces, they just focused on the party aspect, but you kind of like, no, this is interesting to me. This
Yeah,
is
I was like, oh, dance lessons. Yes, that's what I
yeah.
want.
And then, like you said, with the ballroom, because again, that world is extremely competitive. And like you said, the person that you took the initiative to actually call this person and say, I want lessons. I want to learn this,
Yeah,
you know,
I
and
was.
Because again, like, it's a people can be shy, and then you're saying you being a receptionist at one point in that field, and then not being hesitant to take these classes, but just saying, you know what, I'm just going to put my feet in the water and see where it takes me. And I've even told you yourself that I've watched also your past memories of you doing ballroom,
Yeah.
and that right there put a very like, wow, now I understand why she teaches the way she teaches now, why the choreographies, the attention to detail, the technicalities. But again, you can keep going with the ballroom, but that was definitely the distinctions that I really saw thus far.
Yeah. I always say ballroom's my first love.
Yeah.
Never
And
forget your first love.
even Kylie here saying, "Hi, beautiful people. Tina and I are together watching, and we adore you." Yes, and
I
it's
love them so much. They're two of my
yes,
most favorite people in the whole world.
and even your friend Teresa here,
Teresa.
and realize, and we're definitely going to get to Ferocity. But one thing I would love to know is when you were starting the ballroom, was there like an initial fear, or what was like? Was there when starting these classes and then getting better? Was there a hesitation to saying, "I'm learning, and now I'm going to go into performing"?
So I always wanted to perform and compete. I was very
Hmm.
specific. I love everything that is performance. I love telling stories, and I feel like I'm pretty introverted. Like there's parts of me
Gotcha.
that are extroverted, but those parts of me came out because of dancing. Well, in high school it was because of my like dance team, and then as an adult it's been because of any dancing that I've been doing. But as a person, I'm pretty private.
Hmm.
I pretty much I only post on Facebook is really if it's about dancing or dogs.
Yeah.
um, but I've always loved performances. Going to a movie and watching some dancing, or going to like a ballet, and like man, you just like leave feeling some stuff. And I am that person. Like I cry, and like
Hmm.
I go home, and like I don't know if you remember that movie like Shall We Dance with J
Oh
Lo.
yes, absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
not a movie to cry about, right? But I come out of that like crying, and my mom was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, "I want to dance." I was like not like 19 or something. It was like a couple of years
Hmm.
before I actually started working at the studio. But like I wanted that so much. I was like, "That's what I want to do." Like I want to be on a stage, and I want to perform, and like
Hmm.
and I just felt like it was so unfair that like there was this big want in my heart to do it,
Hmm.
but everybody telling me I couldn't because of the way that I looked. And it's something that I've dealt with my entire life. I would say like ever since I moved to the US, even though like now when I look back at pictures of myself when I was younger, and I was
Yeah.
definitely not a big kid, but I was
Hmm.
told that I was the big kid all the time. I was the fat girl all the time. Um,
Hmm.
which is like, whatever, like, but no one really made me feel empowered for it. People made me feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Um, and so then enough people tell you things at an early enough age, you start letting it influence how you see yourself, or if you believe on like in your talents or not, or if you think that what you want to do is stupid. And so like when I got to that ballroom studio, for me all I saw were these like beautiful tiny girls dancing, and they're like, like in ballroom they get like super dressed up for their lessons.
Hmm.
They're like tiny skirts and stuff, and like for me instantly I just felt like they're right, this isn't for me, like I don't fit in here, like that's why I'm sitting here at the receptionist desk. And that's how I felt for like that year. Like every time I wanted to try, I just couldn't get myself to do it. Um but then like when I saw that composition, I was like, okay, and I was just like,
Yeah.
wow. And like, and it was like honestly like and this is what I tell like my teachers now, like when
Yeah.
when they're gonna start teaching people, I'm like, listen, like you have no idea how hard it is for an adult to take a dance class. I was like, because it's much easier for a child to do it, because
Hmm.
usually, right, usually kids are being encouraged to try things, early on and stuff. But for an adult, you're battling however many years they've lived of insecurity, or however many
Hmm.
excuses they've made for themselves to like walk into a dance class for the first time. And so like teaching beginners to me is like the most important thing ever, because you could either set them on the right path, or you could destroy their journey forever. Like you could finish it before it even begins. And so, and that was me. But like once I took like that first step, it was on. I signed up for every possible class that I could, and like that was it. I just lived in the studio. So for me, it was like as soon as I just got the courage to take one class, that was it. That was all I did.
And that's the thing, you touch on something so important, because that is I definitely agree, because as a child, we're more eager. We're not really, a lot of times, like when most people or most dancers, a lot of times have that training from maybe 4 or 5 years old. Don't get me wrong, we can get the ridicule, but it's a lot different when you get to an adult age.
Sure is.
Yeah, when those insecurities mount, and be honest, they always say kids say the darnest things. No, but adults as well. And realizing as you go along in life, it's really you that chooses to even internalize it, but let it go in one ear and out the other. But to have a person like yourself to be so transparent about it, because it's not only you, myself, I've went through that, and many dancers that I talk to, and realizing how much the human aspect of it, and realizing that other human beings, how cruel they can be, and not realize that the words that you use, the tonalities that you use with people, can be a detriment or can be motivation.
For sure.
And you know, it's and I love here too, Leo says, "What's up, Kat?" It looks like somebody's looking younger. You know, and we also too are having questions coming in as well that I'm going to get to from certain people. But it's yeah, absolutely. And oh my God, even Martha here, the real life hero over here, you know, and
Martha.
Yes, Teresa. I mean, the comments are just flooding in, so I'm just putting them up. But again, just realizing, and we're going to get really into more of from the ballroom transition into the dance, like the Latin dancing aspect. But really touching again on the ballroom scene, I've seen it for many years. I've never kind of jumped in those waters. But before you kind of went into, because people don't understand too, with ballroom and the Latin dance scene in terms of like salsa, they have similarities. They have very much similarities. With ballroom, it's seen as more of like the much more technical, much more.
I would say it's structured.
Yes, the structure is different. And people from both styles will let you know that they are different, but they do have some. And again, I really do appreciate, especially with ballroom dancers, because we also see that a lot of these dancers, they start from like 5, 6 years old and been training 20 plus years, but also a person like yourself who's in their early 20s, dipping into those waters and just saying, you know, I'm just going to do it. And then also having that motivation to be like, okay, I'm learning this, I'm getting better and better. And a question I definitely have is, when did you realize you could really, with ballroom, did you start teaching after a few years, or was it just like performing?
So I think because I come from like a more ballroom background, I take the classification of being a professional super seriously. So I never taught ballroom. I still see myself as an amateur in ballroom. So the only thing I did do is I would help, like if someone wanted to, we were taking the same class, or if they like needed help on like a figure, you know, like ballroom has like a set syllabus. And if it was something that I felt comfortable with, like I would just help them practice, and we would practice together. Or like I would invite them to come practice with me in one of my 40 hours of practice in the week. And like they would run drills with me. But I just, you know, I'm not a professional in ballroom, and I respect teaching so much. So I have never like taught that. I would probably say the most I've ever taught has been like very, very social ballroom for like wedding dances, you know, like just like choreography and stuff. Like I leave ballroom to like ballroom professionals.
Yeah, I mean, because again, we realized too, and I definitely agree, is that in terms of dancing, you have the people that really train hard, and that really are focused and determined to being teachers. Because there's a point in dancers' lives that, is it just for fun, or is this a passion that I'm going to really keep going in?
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you're saying yourself that, you know, you weren't those people that they can learn for a year or two and then they're a teacher all of a sudden. It's not that easy.
Honestly, like the more I learned, the more I was like, man, I don't know anything.
And you know, it's like again, I love is that with a person like yourself, having that ballroom background and having that structure and technicality aspect to you is really important because, especially in our Latin dance scene, a lot of times our teachers, our directors, a lot of times just come from that. They learned in classes that taught just that and didn't really venture off into other styles, because I think that's what helps make really a complete dancer.
Mhm.
And then even Martha here says she teaches us enough ballrooms that we can boogie at town.
My coach's studio. So he owns a ballroom studio in Maryland,
Mhm.
house and dance studio. So like a couple times a year we used to go and perform there, and
Yeah.
then like the ballroom parties. So like all my students would be like, "Okay, swing."
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like when then you're going back into the ballroom setting, even though you would like the Latin dance style, having those two genres and styles collaborate or correlate with each other is important
Okay.
because, again, at the end of the day, it's dance. So I
Yeah.
think, just appreciation. And a question I definitely have now is understanding, when did kind of the Latin dance scene and the culture, when did that come into your life?
So that's all credited to one person, and his name is Brian Lee. And you
Mm,
believe you're interviewing him soon. Uh,
yeah.
so Brian used to work at my ballroom studio. So the ballroom studio that I used to work at, I
Hmm.
eventually bought it. So then it was my studio.
Gotcha.
In the transition period, like kind of like before I bought it, and then after, Brian was one of the teachers there, and he was teaching like college kids. And then they didn't have a lot of money, and so he was trying to find a rehearsal space for them that wouldn't charge them. So he started using the studio, and like this was before I bought it, and like the owner made like a deal with him so that they could practice there for free if they would perform at like our showcase. And so they just happened to always practice on the day that I was working. And so then it would just started by like he would just ask for help, and then like he needed some girls, and like as how I grabbed Teresa. Teresa used to just be a student at my ballroom studio, and then I was like, "Hey, you said you want to perform. Like, I feel like you should ask this guy about this group. I think that you
Yeah.
like this group." And so then like little by little, like I would help for like a minute, and then I would help for like 30 minutes, and then like all of a sudden I was like, I do this every week, and like so then like I just really started getting a lot more into bachata, and I was
Hmm.
just bachata classes like to help the studio in like during the week, and I would
Hmm.
like social dancer. They would play two bachata songs a night at the ballroom party, and like that was like kind of it. But like again, I love performances and stuff. This was a performing team, and it was like just so great to like be a part of like teaching or helping people with like choreography and like seeing. And I think that was like my first exposure to like a team, and it
Gotcha.
was really nice to see like a big group of people doing the same thing. And so like that's kind of how I like even got into that. So that group eventually became Dance to Beat, which is Brian's company.
Yeah.
And then I just was kind of his assistant for a few years.
Wow. And then that's something I definitely didn't know. Yeah, I'm interviewing Brian on, I believe, Monday. And for me, I've definitely seen his work for many years, been able to have really, really deep and intuitive conversations. But realizing I love is that, especially with Brian himself, when we have talked, he's definitely talked about you and realizing like the unity that a lot of, because again, with our dance scene, you have, dancers, but then you just really have directors and teachers that really are united with one another, especially from the same cities. And it's important to see like kind of where you started. And there were people there that did definitely guided you in the right path. I mean, like you said, you started with Brian, but then people like Teresa and her still being around in this DC scene as well with Zoot. And definitely for me, I've gotten to meet so many dancers from DC, and the name Ferocity really is like synonymous. And it's just like that's when I ask people, wait, what's a really good like Latin dance kind of school or company? And Ferocity definitely comes up. And a question I have is, how did the beginnings of Ferocity start, or what came about?
So actually, it was kind of a couple of big things that happened together. So we lost our ballroom studio due to zoning issues,
Hmm.
um, and that was really hard because we had worked really, really hard to turn that studio around. And basically, it was just like a technicality in the zoning laws that they had ignored for the whole 20 years it was a studio. But then all of a sudden, it was a problem when we took over. So like our like it was me and two of my friends, my coach, and then my love you Raven. It was my coach, and then my friend Olga and I used to own the studio. So that was like devastating for me. So that was like a really, really dark time in my life. I
Hmm.
always tell people, I was like, there was like a good 2 month period where like I cried, and I would just go home and I would lock the door and I would just like turn off all the lights and I just cried. And my mom was like super concerned about me, so I wouldn't
Yeah.
talk to anybody. I didn't talk to my dad. I just couldn't. I think I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't handle, that I had poured so much of myself into this business and
Yeah.
everything fell apart. Um, and so I was dealing with that, and then of course then trying to like run the group or help Brian put it in like different locations and stuff was like would just become like really hard. And then like Brian started transitioning, like we were young, so like different job opportunities and stuff. So like ultimately we decided to just go our different ways for a bit. And but before that happened, I had told him, I was like, listen, like I have to decide if I want to continue to dance because this is really affecting me. So like, that was the first decision I had to make, and I decided I did want to, but that I needed to do things like my way for me, because I still felt like even though I love ballroom and stuff, I there's still something that didn't fit like me. Like I just didn't fit. And I had seen a couple of like salsa teams and stuff, and like I didn't fit in there either. And like I was like, I just need a place where like I fit in, and like that's just gonna be me. And so like May 1st, like 2012, I like sat at my computer and I was like, I'm gonna start this company. This is gonna be just me, and like, and if it's just me forever, like it'll be fine. Like, but I need something that's like me, and like I'm gonna be able to take care of it, and I'm gonna protect it so that I don't lose it like I lost, already before. And that's just kind of how it started. So when I started in 2012, I had one dancer, Teresa. Teresa came along with me. She was my best friend that time, and I was like, okay, like Teresa's here, so like let's work on a same gender shines piece. And so
Hmm.
we did that together. And then we would practice in different places because I had no studio. So
Yeah.
in one of those times, we ran into a couple of other girls and they expressed interest. So then all of a sudden, I had a whole bunch of girls. So then I was like, all right, like let's do a ladies piece. So then like we
Yeah.
did a ladies piece. And so actually couples was the last thing that we did, because I've never been one to pursue dancers. I don't like doing that. I prefer like if you want to dance with me, like you can ask me, but I'm not going to ask people or put them in that position where like,
Hmm.
it's like an uncomfortable thing to be asked. So I was just never one to ask. So like some of my previous male students that I had taught found out that I had like my own I mean, I was like, I had a Facebook page where they found out I was attached.
Yeah.
They're like, how could you not tell us? Like we want in. And then I was like, oh, okay. I guess we're doing a couples piece now. And like,
Yeah.
and that's when the anxiety set in for me, because I didn't see myself as a pro. I did not classify myself as a professional
Hmm.
dancer until I had to. And I had to in 2016. Was it 16? Yes. 2016, one of my dancers wanted to do a pro-am piece with me. And then I was like, oh fuck, that means I'm the pro.
Yeah, you can't
And
call yourself the amateur champion. See?
so then, but like, but coming from ballroom, like, man, I was just so uncomfortable with like, and I think there's still days where I'm like, man, like, am I really a pro? Like, I have a problem with that. Like, I just feel like
Mhm.
teaching is so important. It's such a big responsibility. And I'm
Yes.
like, man, like, and number one, like, I am always a student. I love being a student. I love learning. I wish that I had infinite amount of money so that I could just train with all these amazing dancers.
Hmm.
Um, but like, man, like to see myself as a pro was like, oh. So then for me, it was like, oh man, like I don't know if I can do partner work. I was like,
Mm.
I've not had to do it yet. And I was like, all sorts of anxiety. I was like, I don't know if I can choreograph like a couple's piece. And for me, it was really important to have my pieces be mine, like to have me do the choreo. So, and that first piece that we did, I had a little bit of help from my friend Mike Zuniga from California.
Yes.
So he had come out for an event, and I had a good chunk of the piece done, but he helped us out, and like we collabed a little bit and like came up with some stuff, and then later on, like we went changing it and stuff. And once we did that, I was like, okay, like you can do it, but like you're gonna have to like plan for this.
Hmm.
I wasn't in the beginning like someone that could choreograph on the fly. Like I had to really think about like everything that I was doing. So that's how we started. It was literally like, oh, I have this group of people now. Like, okay, we'll do this now. And like, I didn't do auditions. So I think for like the first almost 2 years.
And that's and I think it's really important what you said of the necessity and understanding that you're in a position where a student wants to do a pro-am piece, and now you have to kind of figure out, am I really now going to start becoming or see myself as that professional? Because again, like you said, your experience in that ballroom, it can be very strenuous. It can be very stressful mentally because you have people who've been doing this maybe for decades. And
Yeah.
again, it's like the impression they can leave on you can make you still have those insecurities as you grow. And now becoming a teacher, now there's a road between, are you going to be the ultimate professional you can? And I love what you talked about Mike Zuniga, because I've seen him for many years and I see that correlation. I see that collaboration with Finger Dancing, and I love it. And, at least before we definitely do get forward, I want to kind of bring now this new segment, the randoms, as I call it. And we're
Okay.
going to have 10 questions. You got about 5 seconds to answer these 10 questions. And so me, myself, and others can get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
Absolutely. So first question is, what is your favorite food?
Oh, fried eggs and white rice.
Okay. Second one is, what is your favorite workout song?
Workout song, Church.
By who?
I think it's a T-Pain and a couple of other people.
Gotcha.
I'm
Gotcha.
to it.
Okay. Next one is, what is your dream vacation destination?
Greece, where I was supposed to go this year.
I'm assuming a Santorini.
Yes.
Yep. Next question is, what did you want to be at 10 years old?
An artist.
Next question is, what's your spirit animal?
What was it? Panda.
Okay. I'm a fan of Kung Fu Panda myself. So, I mean, next question is, this is a dance question. Partner work or footwork?
Footwork.
Okay. Let me see. Next one is, what would be your superpower?
Oh, man. I would like to be able to take away anybody's pain and sadness.
Oh, that is deep. Next one would be 3 people that have been most influential to you at this point.
Zhenya Bartashevich, my coach. Isidro Corona, who's one of my best friends from California. And Julissa Cruz from UC.
Awesome. Next one would be the special talent that maybe people wouldn't know you have.
Do I have any talent? I could draw unicorns.
Okay, I mean that's something. And the last one would be, if you were on an island, what's 3 things that you would have with you?
My dog. I would say my phone and then a picture of my dad.
That's awesome. See, and that right there already, those.
Yes.
Yeah, you got Sean here. Of course, you got Adriana. Yes, eggs.
Even my fried egg people.
Yeah, you got to be an honorary Dominican already. I mean,
there you go.
and Martha says here she's an amazing designer.
Oh, costume designer. True.
Yeah,
I like designing costumes.
Yeah, and I love that with these kind of the randoms, it really kind of like breaks the ice in a sense. I mean, we talk about things that are so deep, but having those key questions really quick to have the audience get to know you more. I mean, fried eggs and rice now is like people now who didn't know now know. Absolutely. And, again, I thank you for doing this quick segment. It's something I'm really going to do because it helps me get a better understanding. And like, I love fried eggs and rice. So, I mean, for me, that's awesome. And, I would now the transition of understanding with Ferocity, because you said around like 2016, for me, my recollection, I started seeing visuals of then the performances, but then there was a point where it turned into competitions.
That was 2015.
Got you. And the thing was for me, and we've talked about this, that especially from a place like World Latin Dance Cup, which is a huge world-renowned competition that dancers literally from all over the world go to, and having that live access for people who can't go and be able to see people from their cities, their towns, their countries compete is amazing. And for me, I've talked to you about this. One of my favorite routines, I don't know what it was called, but it was a white routine. And that routine I absolutely love because all of the dancers, you could feel the genuineness, you could feel the emotion, you could feel that they really felt the music. And I think that's something sometimes a lot of dancers, unfortunately, sometimes lack. Because especially when it comes to a competition, the focus is the end result is winning. But sometimes artists and dancers forget the relationship or the responsibility on stage is to really give a great show. And again, you never know who you can inspire. And something I would love to know is from entering in with Ferocity in the social setting, maybe going to congresses and festivals, and then also doing competitions. What were those experiences like? Were there really huge differences between the two?
They're completely different. I would say like when you go to a congress, the focus is really, friendly vibes, like making friends and making connections. And then when we went to our first competition was actually in Mexico, and I was like, wow, this is not a congress anymore. Like you definitely felt like people didn't want to talk to it like to us at all. And it was just like it was like so strange. And like I think because I view competitions very differently. Like yes, we go, but I go for a very different reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so like for me, I think um, I've never had like the huge financial background to be able to dance. Dance is
Mm-hmm.
seen as a luxury hobby.
Yeah.
And of course, I started with ballroom, which is like the most expensive thing you could possibly
Those costumes cost a pretty penny, I tell you.
do. And so I feel like I've always had to be in a position where I have to defend why I spend the money that I do. Like, why do you spend that much money on lessons? Why do you spend this much money on costumes? And like, and like, so it's hard that even like in my place, I
Mm-hmm.
felt like I still had to explain myself. And so I wanted to go to a place where like I was hoping I would meet a lot of people just like me. And that's exactly what I found. Even if they're there to like hardcore compete, like you just can't feel that level of inspiration from any other kind of place, because you can tell that like no matter where you look, there are people and you can tell that they have sacrificed everything in their entire life that year
Mm-hmm.
to get there, to pay for that costume, to do their hair, to work on their body, to work on their choreography. Like you can feel it, like
Yeah.
they're there and like they're so grateful to be on that stage. And like it's so inspiring. And so for me, as as a creative, as a choreographer, I need that. I need to be in like this space surrounded by people that make me feel like I'm not psychotic, I'm not crazy. And like, and you don't have to explain yourself to those people. They get it, they
Mm-hmm.
understand. And that's always what I tell my students. I was like, like we go to compete. I was like, but it's because I want you to have that experience that you don't
Yeah.
get at a congress. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want you to be surrounded by those people. I want you to really feel what it is to dance like with a purpose. Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't become about winning. It's more like, man, like we want to represent the US because we've been the only US team a few times when we've gone to these competitions. Or like, man, like we want to represent like home, like DC, like people are so supportive. Like we want, like for me, especially in the beginning, I was like, I want to do it for my dad, like
Yeah.
because the first competition was immediately after he passed away, the year right after, and it was like a whole emotional roller
Yeah.
coaster for me. And so we do it for a very different reason. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's so of course it's great, to win the trophies and stuff, like that's nice. But like when we look at them in the case, like I don't really look at it and I'm like, yeah, like I remember when we got on the podium and
Yeah.
I look at it and I remember like what we were talking about earlier. I remember like the hotel room conversations that we had at that competition, or
Mm-hmm.
friend that we made, or the person backstage that wasn't ready and like we were able to help them get ready for their competition.
Hmm.
Like, we're those people. Like yeah, the people, like, you're not supposed to help. We help people like at competitions and stuff, and like, and so for me, it's completely different. But I love the competitions. And I feel like everyone that really loves to dance should go at least once,
Yeah.
because it's truly amazing to see people that love this
Mhm.
so much, and you can see all the work and all the sacrifice that they do for this thing, and it makes you feel like, okay, this thing that I'm doing is not this tiny, like, random, like, whatever, like, it's important, and there's a lot of
Mhm.
people that it's very, very important for them, and here I am, like, and we're not crazy together.
No, it's true, and I think what's really special is that for me, when I was watching those type of competitions, like the one in Mexico, I think it's Eurozone,
Yeah,
Yeah, Eurozone, and then watching World Latin Dance Cup, because we're so used to, and for me, I'm so used to when it came to like, because at one point in our dance scene, salsa was that was it, especially in DC with like Earl Rush, Calvin
yeah.
Harris, and different people. I remember when salsa was like that's it, and bachata was maybe you get one or two or three songs in the room.
Oh, two max, or
Yeah,
the food by the
yeah,
public.
it's true. And the thing is realizing that there was a shift throughout, I think, as well as the US. Europe kind of got that a lot earlier, around maybe 2008, with the Sydney Bachata Festival being one of the first events for bachata. But for me, realizing, especially with bachata, that when you saw these competitions, because I remember what you said earlier was there was a point in our communities when we didn't have YouTube.
Yeah,
When we didn't, you actually had to go to these events to see these artists, or
yep,
you had to wait for the DVD to come out and
yep.
then see it. But then
The actual
having, yeah, so like to actually like see a group that wasn't from Mexico, that wasn't from Spain, that was from DC, even though it wasn't New York or like the quintessential Californias and Texases, that hey, you have a place here that there's some awesome dancers, and they actually won amongst all of the people that have competed, and they're actually being themselves. And like you said, I love is that it's amazing to me that the humility aspect, because when you talked about going to these competitions and how honestly mentally draining and how ruthless in a sense it can be, and about being kind of selfish to yourself and your team, but you as a team being very like, we're the same people, even if we weren't at a competition, we're going to help you even though other people say don't. And I think that too helps you create those relationships with artists all over the world, because they just see that, again, we're here for a purpose, but at the same accord, we're here to have fun and just have an experience.
hmm
Because, again, you like you said, you see so many teams for years that they train for that one performance on that show. And I know you've seen it, that there have been shows that everything goes right and one mishap changes the
And your
whole day.
heart, I tell you, if you're watching it, your heart breaks for them as if it was you on that stage.
Yeah. And it's really for me. Yeah,
Let me
Rob over here, the goat. And to be honest too, it's like I think it's even more amazing is that for me, you were one of the first, in my opinion, in terms of the bachata scene, to be one of like the leading female leads and teachers. Because I think there's a stigma. There was a stigma for so many years that when it came to bachata, it had to be male and female. And I love that in the past few years, honestly, people like yourself, people like Tina and Kyla, like Bree Jones and other females have really put, or other people, I would say, because again, we have to stop the idea of the gender roles.
hmm
And we also have to understand that, again, it doesn't have to be a male and a female teaching. And
Correct.
realizing a person like yourself having the responsibility of being a director and a teacher to your company, that your students are looking up to you and your students are understanding that, hey, it's a long road. It's not easy. It's not just about always going to a show, but there's always that little bit of ridicule. There's always those questions that people have, and people are not going to understand, because sometimes they'll just say, oh, Kat's teaching, but who's she teaching with? And for me, it's like when I started to see, when I would go to DC, or I would see flyers with your name on it at different events, And then I would see the workshops, and I'm saying, who cares if she's a male or a female? She's doing amazing. Like, it's to me, it's a beautiful thing seeing that over the past few years, the object and the notion of a gender role or a woman can't lead is really being thrown away. That idea, because again, in my opinion, female leads and follows, as long as you can dance and you have fun, but you're teaching correctly.
Hmm.
Because it's a difference between being just a social dancer and then being a teacher. Because again, that responsibility of
Yeah,
whatever work you put out, that's a reflection. Your students are a reflection of yourself,
for sure.
And for me, I would really love to know. And honestly, even as we're talking, tons of comments, and you'll be able to see this even after we finish, like the tons of comments that are rolling in, like especially from Janice here,
Oh,
realizing again, that's a key thing of
love you.
unity. Even Carrie here, Carrie Landia, all the way from
Yeah.
Orlando.
Oh,
And it's like, again, I love is that again people can come on here and appreciate you, because again, it hasn't been an easy road. It's not always an easy road for dancers, and especially now with yourself being like a lead teacher. Like, you can follow, but you really putting that out there, that it doesn't matter if you're male or female, as long as you can put that work on the dance floor. And constantly seeing you like traveling and doing workshops, and people will just, there's not really any more questions when I see it. It's just like, oh my God, Kat's here and I got to go to her workshop. Because for me, I'm looking from the outside in. I'm hearing the comments, I'm like, people just love going to your classes. It's just something that's like infectious about what you do. I mean, of
yeah.
course, we got Carlos here. She deserves all the Peruvian food.
Oh, all the food that you never cooked for me in a million years of friendship.
And our boy Rock here, the
Let's
Rock
see for
Shank. Yeah,
rockstudio.com because he's
yeah,
gonna do it.
yes. And even Martha here saying, I love the look on people's faces when they walk into a class, realize Kat is the lead and main instructor. It's true. And it's like, and I love is that, for me, a question I definitely have is, from with Ferocity and your experience of traveling. I'm sorry, even before we get to it, of course, Carlos comments. And then Sean has to kind of put that input in. It's honestly, from your many years with Ferocity and teaching and traveling, one thing I would love to know from your opinion, what is that experience like in DC, in terms of the place that I know that everybody talks about, the salsa room? What is that experience like?
Oh, salsa room is so special. So I've been to salsa room since before it was salsa room. It used to be called Cecilia's. And when it was Cecilia's, it was exactly how they used to show salsa clubs in the movies. It had a black and white checkered floor, and it had like old school DJs, and like it was all salsa. And like you were lucky if you got two bachata songs a night, and the DJ better not play them back to back because the people would riot. And it was like the place to be, and like they
Mhm.
brought Oscar de Leon and like all these like
Mm.
amazing artists for concerts like there. So
Yeah,
like Cecilia's was already special, and then they did the revamp and became TSR or Salsa Room.
yeah,
And I think that, I mean, people have like a lot of different opinions, just based on like like they're also a club, so like it's not 100%
yeah.
dancers venue, but the salsa room is definitely a really important staple in our dance community because for a
Mhm.
lot of years, this was the one place that had dance nights that we could go to. So like Thursday nights used to be salsa night, and like I don't dance salsa. Salsa,
Gotcha.
salsa doesn't like me, so I would just watch salsa. But like I would go on Thursday nights just to sit and watch because it felt like watching a movie.
Mm.
Like all the instructors, all the pros, all the best like everyone would go to TSR like way back in the day on Thursday night, and that it was full of these amazing like salsa dancers, and it looked just like the movies, and like and that's really like how a lot of these communities started like being created. And then
Yeah.
Island Touch came into DC, and like, that's how the
Hmm.
Bachata Wednesday started, which is like the biggest night, or I mean, was before COVID. The
Yeah.
big night at TSR was the Bachata Wednesday night, and so I think that to actually get to like be at Salsa Room, I think that once when you live here, it's something that gets taken for granted. Because you know they're like, oh yeah, it's TSR. But like when I went to California once, someone was like, oh, "You're from DC," and like they grabbed my arm, and I was like, first I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
they were like, "Oh my God, do you get to go to the salsa room?" And I was like, in my head, I was like, I just went in like my leggings and a shirt the other day, and I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
they're like, and they just went off, and they're like, oh my God, like it is my dream to go there. I see all the videos and blah, and like,
Hmm.
and it's like really, really important that people recognize, like, okay, like there's these venues, these places, these people that have kept their doors open so long that
Yes.
for us to be able to grow, that the scene would not be what it is or how big it is if it hadn't had these places to grow in to begin with.
Yeah.
And so like South Room is has has become that place. I have countless amounts of memories there.
Yeah, and for me, I think for myself, I haven't been there. My wife has been there, but one of the things, and before I even say anything, Teresa saying DC has one of the strongest dance communities, and I believe she means in the country, but she probably put
Does.
three. But and realizing for me, my experience of seeing TSR, people like, I think it was Jimmy Yoon and other people, when you have visuals of not just the performances, but having visuals of just tons of different social dancers.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing um, people like, Ace Fusion, people like Ciara, people like Bree, and other dancers that when they come there and those few minutes of dancing with someone, you see the viral effect of like that one video, like you said, going to California, someone like, wow, you go to the salsa room. And again,
Mm-hmm.
that shows also how important the dance communities have those spaces,
For sure.
because it doesn't mean you have to live in DC to understand what
Right.
DC is about.
Right.
And for me, I really do love too at the salsa room is when they would have, it's like a circle. It's like it's a even with the performers or the demos they would have,
Yeah.
it's that kind of just
The
circular effect.
perimeter. Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, I love that. And over the years, the countless dancers that I've seen there, but then been able to meet, and you kind of get that shock. Like, I just saw you on a video, and you did amazing, and
Yep.
now you're in another city, and it's like that's the question: what is it
Yep.
like? You
Mm-hmm.
know, people like DJ Immersive, people like DJ Hercules, other people as well. But I think a key thing you said too was when I spoke to Rudy about this, from Rudy from Island Touch, was when that collaboration happened. I really loved too was that the promotional aspect of the salsa room
Yeah.
became more sophisticated, more
That's
classy.
that's the owner, Franco.
Yeah,
He does all those designs himself.
absolutely. And for me, again, promotion is very key, because seeing those, even those flyers, as minimalistic as the designs can be, it really does bring people in.
You also
And
like I think once you see them, even before you actually see the TSR logo, you know what the flyer is for.
yeah, especially those infamous pajama parties and those
Yeah.
crazy crazy things. But again, it's beautiful to see that a place like DC has so many memories, has so many dancers, especially even people like Emerson, my boy Emerson here, DJ Immersive,
I thought
and
I had a body roll.
yeah. And even us having the conversation, knowing that with Immersive himself, that he was a DJ before he was a dancer. He
Yeah.
was also in your company as well at one point. And for me, I think it's really special, because realizing that those relationships you have with, either they become DJs, and now becoming from stepping from a different a side of like doing the music, now being a part of the music, and now performing, I think it's special. And for me, I think, I know, is that with Ferocity, but the DC dance scene, especially on the East Coast, that's one of the main staples. It doesn't really matter the city, but when you say the salsa room, that's automatic DC.
Yeah.
And what I love too is that, especially even though we have salsa, bachata has really been, like, for the last maybe 8 years, I can say honestly, hey, it's really been kicking. I think your Martha says here, Grease Lightning at TSR.
Yeah, we did a remake of Grease. So
Hmm.
we did, I think, 5 or 6 different like Grease shows, and it was
Yeah.
self-serve commission. That was really fun there.
Man, and see, like just having that, like just being stepping outside of the box and just doing things that you love. And it kind of now helps me transition to understanding, we have these special events, but this past year or this year right now, things just really changed and warped. And one thing I
Yeah.
could say is with COVID, it really I could see in a lot of dancers, especially in DC, the constant when it came to the memories they would repost about I was just at salsa room and I didn't think that would be my last dance. I didn't think
Hmm.
that because for so many months now we realize with COVID it really did affect our community as a whole because we thrive on the connection, we thrive on just being with one another, socializing, and that kind of has put a halt in that. But realizing too, and we've talked as well that hey, now we have to adapt. We have to understand that this has happened. Of course, the focus is the safety first, but we also understand that people want to dance again and people want to get back into it, but we're living under a new normal. And I really would love to understand from your perspective, how was that? How was this transition or how has this period been for yourself?
I mean, I'll be very honest. It's been really, really hard. I think, the studio went instantly to like almost 50% less income overnight. And then now we're operating on 20% of what we were making before. So just financially, it's really hard. And I'm lucky enough that I have a day job, but I also have twice the amount of responsibilities because I have to be responsible for the studio as well as my house and my mom and everything. So in the beginning, I think it was, I mean, the same feeling that everybody had. I was super depressed and super unsure and not really sure what the next steps were because you couldn't find anyone that's been through this. It's no one in our generation has been through this. um, and so then I think I gave myself like a week to be all like nice and depressed about it, and then I was like, all right, like we have to keep pushing. Like my students deserve to finish their season. Some of the teams are on break now, but I was like, they need to at least finish what we started so that they have something for this year. And so then I would come to the studio by myself, every day and just put videos together for them. I'm like, here's your next choreo. Then we started practicing again virtually, and a lot of like hiccups and like learning curves here and there. But just trying to make it happen as much as possible. And but I mean, like, it's hard, from a financial standpoint. Eventually everyone's gonna have to make that decision depending on how much longer this goes on how much more you can take. And so that moment for me actually came. I was part of the Port City Salsa Splash. They did it online this year, obviously because they had to cancel. And we had like a panel talk on the last like day of it. And when they were doing the panel talk, COVID came up. So the panel talk ended up being all about COVID at the end of the day. Um, but I realized that like I started saying that. I started saying that number one, that dance studios are super important. That if your dance studios die, your dance scene is going to die because dance studios are the ones that allow the teams to rehearse, and that classes can go on or private lessons can be taught. And so like if these hubs start to like go away, it will affect the dance scene whether you realize it now or not. And so and I said it, and I think Andres Giraldo was there and his brother, and they agreed too. And I was like, there's a anyone that owns a studio immediately assumes a massive amount of risk because dancing is not for most people, right? Like dancing is not what you do to make money. Like dancing is
Mhm.
a labor of love. You do it because you love it and you want it to like fill your soul with joy, and that's how you want to live your life. And most of the time, like if you can get it to a point where like we can coast, we're fine. The
Yeah.
problem is that COVID took us from coasting to crashing down overnight. We all closed, and then that was it. That's
Mhm.
if you're not teaching, you have no income coming in. And so that day when I was like talking, I said it. I was like, everyone's gonna have to make the call as to like how much more can I take. and does the benefit still outweigh the risk? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on how long it goes on for people, like that decision, is gonna have to be made. And so then I had to make my decision that weekend because, I don't think I had realized like how much it was affecting me to kind of be alone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was either at home by myself because, and I work from home because of
Yeah.
COVID, and then, or I was at the studio by myself and like putting these videos out and not always getting feedback, or like, my students are going through things themselves. So like when they're going through things, like they don't talk to me. And then it's really hard as a teacher to not internalize that because
Mm-hmm.
we're going through this stuff too. And so I like cried like for like 12 hours after that panel talk. And then the next day I was like, okay, like we're going for it. Like we're gonna do everything possible to try to stay open. And then it's just research. And so I started looking up like what are different schools doing worldwide, because we hadn't really opened yet, and we were able to open like in July 1st, and I was like super nervous about it and just researching like, okay, like how do I do this, like what can I do? So like I myself tried to do the most minimal amount of activities. Like I get my nails done and like that's about it. Like sometimes I'll go eat like at a restaurant and stuff, but like I
Mm-hmm.
don't go anywhere. I go to the studio and I go home. Like I've been tested twice just to make sure that I'm good. Like I've been negative and stuff. So like because I'm the one that sees the most people, I'm like, all right, I unfortunately have to make the most sacrifice to like just keep on living this hermit life. But so that at least people know that like the one person that is mostly here,
Yeah.
I'm doing the most that I can. We're pretty strict. I'm super strict. I'm sure like people will
Yeah.
tell you that have come back to the studio or been told that they can't come back. And I would rather be overly cautious than not cautious enough. You can get mad at me because I'm not going to let you in, but you're not going to get mad at me because you got COVID, because like that's just not a thing. I'm
Yeah.
so overly cautious, like, you know, maybe to a fault, but for me, it's just not worth taking the risk. And you can't make everybody happy. There's definitely criticisms on all
Mm-hmm.
schools for
Yeah.
opening at all. But, for a lot of us, like if we close, that's it. There is no opening again or like let me fix things back up, because closing means that our credit takes a hit, that our
Yep.
financials take a hit, and then that takes time to recover from. And like, so for some of us, if it closes, that's it. That's the end. Like you're not going to see a lot of these companies again. And it's really sad because I've seen closures announced on Facebook left and right. And
Yeah.
it's like super, super sad. So I think that the least we can do for the schools that are still surviving, especially like in honor of the schools that have had to close, which are our friends, those are our friends. Like we're all one community, is we need to give it our all. We need to try our best to be safe for the community. And I would just say, if you see that your schools are doing the best that they can and you're still not comfortable coming, like, then you need to support in some way. Buy a shirt, buy a virtual class, even if you're not going to take it, like something, like everyone's trying so hard, and to do all this virtual stuff is like
Yeah.
much more work than when we were just teaching in person. And like the amount of money that we all have to invest in like getting masks or getting hand sanitizer and like getting stuff set up virtually and stuff. So like it's been really, really hard. And it's not just financially, it's like a lot of it's emotional. There's definitely
Mm-hmm.
good days and bad days, and there's days where I'm just like so stressed out because I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. And
Yeah.
ultimately I'm just choosing to trust myself and being as safe as possible. And we have a waiver and a questionnaire and all these things, and just we haven't had a single issue since July, so hopefully it works.
Yeah. And honestly, again, I applaud you so much, because again, you focusing on the safety of your students rather than just the financial understanding or the financial gain that you get. Because again, people have to understand with that's going on. There are the people that take this seriously, but there's also people that say if it hasn't affected me, it doesn't
Right.
affect me. But realizing that your responsibility as a teacher, that your responsibility is to your students and making sure that they have a great time and they're learning, but they're safe. And again, you being overly strict, I'd rather you be overly strict, and you being transparent about it. It means a lot. And even, even Jalissa here saying, everything is emotional.
It sure
And
is.
Yeah, you're doing, and honestly, what Julissa is saying, you are doing awesome, honestly. And again, I want everybody to support businesses like yourself because you are, with now restrictions easing, you're still keeping that safety measure in place because again, in dance studios, that's a breeding ground for things to happen. And the fact that saying thus far no one has gotten sick, that's beautiful because again, all it takes is one. But I
Yeah,
think honestly, throughout our discussion, I've learned so much about you, but your dedication is really something that sticks out to me. And at least before we close this, I really want to thank you so much, especially because recently you've been through the help of Sean Batista from 24K Visions, you've been able to kind of release visuals of Ferocity and keep people in tune to see what Ferocity's been up to. Because again, it's like during these times, things can get lost, and
yeah,
realizing that you still have a company of dedicated students and dancers that want to be a part of it, and being able to have that promotion still, even under the circumstances. Even I love the outdoor approach to it, and just seeing the
yeah.
dancers'
We did
emotion.
everything COVID safe, so
Yeah.
outside is the only way.
Absolutely. And again, I definitely appreciate it. Even Gisette says here, yes, the videos are fire. You know, of course, you got to show that love and appreciation because again, visuals mean so much.
Yeah,
Because especially our, not even just our generation, but us as people, we've been so like visuals capture us and they bring us in. So even a 2-minute visual, you
for
kind of
sure.
see like, man, I remember dancing with that person. I miss that. So I
Hmm.
definitely appreciate it and I love it. And for me, it's been really amazing to be able to talk to you, Kat, and get to learn more about you and your life and what you've been able to do from the past to present and looking towards the future and keeping again your students and your dancers safe. Because in the future, I believe we will all be able to reunite, but of course it'll be under a new normal. But again, just seeing the amazing product of dancers that you've been able to train and see what they've been able to do, it means a lot, and it shows your dedication, your commitment to your craft is second to none. Because again, even through all of your adversity and your struggles in life, you still persevere, and that is commendable. Because again, this business can make you and break you, and
Multiple times.
absolutely, absolutely. And at least before we close out, I would love if you could to give, if you have any last words, really, for myself and the audience.
I would say that you can never put more emphasis on what other people think of you than what you think of yourself. And if there's something that you want to do, the only thing that will really separate you from it is the amount of work you're willing to do.
Mhm.
So don't believe it if people tell you that you don't look a certain way, that you can't do something, that you're not talented enough. If you're willing to put the work in, you'll get to whatever it is that you want to do. And then believe in yourself, and the way that you value yourself will really set the stage for how other people value you. So you got to be your best cheerleader. You have to trust your vision, and you have to do things with the right intent. You do things the correct way with the right intent for the right reasons, then eventually, even if you have to go to hell to get it, through hell and back and multiple times again, you'll get there, and it'll be so much more worth it.
Absolutely. And those are beautiful words. And again, it comes from your experience and realizing the road that you took to get to where you are now, but also seeing that, you're focused on the future. Because again, you realize your students love you and your students are coming back, and they understand your vision now. And again, is that you still being able to inspire them through dance, even through our toughest times, means a lot. And again, I thank you for coming on to the platform. And I tell a lot of my guests as well is that I love this because during these times, and like we've talked about, these discussions that we have is always usually in the hotel rooms when we're done
Yeah.
with the craziness.
The
But I
best part
think
of Congress.
it is, and that's the thing too. A lot of people don't get from a lot of us dancers in our communities, And I've had the pleasure of speaking even to Brian, Adriana, many dancers that I've had on before in this platform. I've been able to have those really touching and meaningful conversations, and realizing that even what we're going through now, how I can still reach out to people like yourself and want just to understand you as the person, because I can understand you as the performer and seeing all of the accolades and accomplishments you've had throughout the years, but really saying, hey, I would love to know you more than just a dancer. Because I think too, that gets a little lost, is they just see Kat as the dancer, as the instructor, as the performer, but they have to also understand Kat, the person, the human being. What was it like for you before this? So, I definitely appreciate you coming tonight. And at least before we go, is there any can you also give contact information so people can be able to reach you and to know what you're doing for the future?
So you can go to my website, which is ferocitydance.com. And on Instagram, we're also Ferocity Dance. And then I'll post those are the best. And then Facebook, Ferocity Dance Company. No matter where you put Ferocity, just type it in. I would say the website is probably the best. It has all of our COVID measures on there and all the requirements in order to be able to come back to the studio. And then it has all the programs that we have, all the new editions that we start in October. So that's probably where you're going to get the most amount of information, like in one stop. And then it has like a contact form, so you can email me and I'll write you back almost at any time as long as I'm awake.
Absolutely. And again, I just love, the visuals that especially with Sean and yourself are putting out, and just keeping us still informed about what Ferocity is doing, but also what you're doing. So again, I really thank you. I'm glad that you're staying safe even through these rough times. I know as well that DC is slowly trying to get that scene back, but doing it on a safer accord. So I definitely appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come here and be able to speak to me. And I've learned so much more about you, and I feel a lot more connected. And again, I appreciate the contribution that you've been able to make all of these years, and seeing the many dancers that have come in and out of your studio, and just seeing overall the love that they have for you. Because again, with teachers, they can be so demanding that people just want to get out. But just realizing that the heart that you put in it shows. And especially after this interview, you can look at all the comments, and just seeing people that really honestly that just love you and just love what you're about, and love your journey. So again, Kat, I really thank you so much. And again, this is our first interview, and I definitely don't want it to be our last, because I would love to catch up with you during like closer to the end of the year, and seeing what you're doing next, and updating myself and updating the audience, and knowing what Ferocity is doing, because again, we're going through a rough time, but it's not going to stop us from enjoying what we love.
Sure won't.
Absolutely. So again, Kat, I thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing weekend coming up, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Diamond. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. And until next time. Thank you guys again for tuning into another episode of Live Discussions with Diamond. Amazing, phenomenal interview with Kat. Hope you all have a great weekend. Stay tuned. New interview coming up this Monday with Brian Lay from Dance to Beat. And again, everyone, have a beautiful night and a beautiful upcoming weekend. Peace.